What's up, guys? Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be going over how to lay your tile on a 45-degree pattern, or as some people like to call it, a diamond pattern. It's a super simple process. If you can lay out a straight lay pattern, you can lay out a 45-degree pattern. The only difference is that you have to be aware of how to shift the pattern inside your room so that you minimize those small little triangle cuts. And I'm going to show you exactly how I go about assessing my floors to save myself time, energy, and ultimately provide a professional looking product for the customer or for your own home.
Here I am where the movie started, facing at a photo they've taken. Space tree flying through the skies and battles happen everywhere.
Okay, so here I have my trusty template again. If you watched the first video on tile layout, then you recognize this probably. So, similar concept. The way that you're going to start off your floor is by finding the center of your door jamb as you walk into the main room. If you have two doors in your room and you're like, Zach, I have two doors, I don't know which one to do, go off of the one that the traffic flows into most of the time. That's going to be the most aesthetically pleasing way to line up your tile pattern in any case, whether it is a kitchen or whether it's a bathroom. So in this case, we have one doorway, and I'm going to find the center of that. Basically, drawing is almost marked to scale. So each square is about 3 inches, and each green tile is approximately 12 inches, 12 by 12. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the center of my doorway by measuring. That is about the center of my doorway. Now, if I were doing this on a real floor, I would simply grab a tape measure, measure the width, split it in half, and mark the half mark. Now, I also showed you in the first video that you're going to pull this measurement to the wall over here and get that distance. And I believe in this case, I could count the squares, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to call it probably 2.5 feet. And so I'll just go up here and I'll just mark what I think is going to be roughly 2.5 feet. You'll notice that I'm doing this as close to this tub wall as I can, because that's going to give me the longest part of this wall to go off of. I don't want to take two measurements a foot from each other, because that's only going to be a foot of this wall. And I want to get my tile pattern parallel to this wall over here. Now that I have finished with that, I'm going to mark my straight edge like that. Now I have a line to go off of. So I can turn, since my pattern is going to be on a 45, I can turn it like this and go point to point. So now what we have to do is figure out how to shift our pattern front and back so that we minimize the size of cuts in our tile. Because when you start cutting these up against a flat wall, you're going to end up cutting a portion of that off. And what you don't want is you don't want your pattern to end like this, you see? Because then you're going to have a tiny little triangle to fill in all the way down either your wall against your tub or this long wall right here. You're kind of locked in because you've got this side to side measured, but you see how close we are to this corner over here? If we left that like that and baseboard wouldn't cover, then you're going to have to cut tiny little triangles the entire length of this wall. Okay, so what I would do is I would just shift the whole pattern over slightly on your floor so that you end up cutting that piece off. And then when you have to cut this tile, you basically are almost cutting it in half. Okay? So, yes, you want to center it up in your doorway, but if it's a difference between moving it over an inch or so, or 2 inches, or having to cut a bunch of little triangles over there, I would suggest moving it over, because the average person is not really going to pick up an inch or two, maybe 2 inches, but an inch, you probably won't see that in the center of your doorway. Now, same thing goes for up against your tub. I would suggest not having your pieces end with a tiny little triangle up against your tub as well. That is a hard cut to make all the way down your tub. It's also an unsightly cut to have to see when you walk in to your bathroom. And as you know, the minute you walk into your bathroom, most people are going to be walking either to the toilet, the sink, or the tub, and your eye is going to pick up on that grout line right there. That's also why I don't recommend that you start with a full tile up against the tub. If you start and use your tub as your reference line to start your floor, you could run into problems because a lot of times tubs are not exactly square to the exterior wall back here. And even if they are, it doesn't look like it was planned out very well if you're using a full tile up against the tub. It always looks better if you're cutting into your tile a couple of inches. And what I mean by that is I would shift it slightly that way. And that way you're cutting off a larger part. And then you also have the fill as a larger part. You see what I mean? Now, since we've done that, what we also want to do is make sure that we aren't messing ourselves up when we're doing our door jamb. Okay? Now, if you're a little confused about laying out this pattern close to your tub and your door, just know that you have some play here. You have some wiggle room. So if you cut this off and you have your little piece in here, like that, that is a great place to end your tile up against your tub. Also, down here in your door jamb, you will end up having a full tile here and also a half tile, give or take, cut down here. Okay, that's perfect. Now, if you had a longer, or I should say a wider room, and you were closer to this type of thing here, then I would say do what you have to do to shift this so that you make these cuts here as large as possible on both sides. This doesn't have to be exactly split in the middle, but what you want is when you cut these corners off, you really want your corners to be larger than 3 to 4 inch piece cut off. Like that. If you get too small, the problem that happens is you have to cut these smaller pieces on a wet saw, and that is time consuming. Okay? The larger pieces you can cut on a diagonal with your inexpensive tile scribe cutter or your clinker, and you can still make them look neat and professional, because remember, your cuts up against your tub are going to be a raw cut surface. They're not going to be covered by baseboard of any type. You're going to end up having to caulk those. So doing this makes your job and your life easier. It makes your cut time less. It makes your job go more smoothly. And also, it's easier to install tiles like this on your floor when they're larger. It's much harder to take a tiny little square and install it, because the smaller the tiles, the more they want to kind of teeter-totter in their place. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope that I've provided enough information so that you can get started on your next tile project. If not, feel free to ask questions in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer them. I can also provide more video education on specific topics. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. If you're enjoying this information, think about subscribing to my channel. I'd appreciate it. It's going to help me grow and help me be able to make free videos in the future for all of you. Until next time, I've been your host, Zach Galenzi, and this is Relax and Renovate. Bye.
Where the movie started, facing at a photo they've taken. Space tree flying through the skies and petals happen.